Hello everybody, today's video is brought to you by the most persistent brand partner we've ever worked with, Wash and Go. When I think back to the first phone call I had with Mr. Wash and Go, I even said, why are you so persistent in getting me involved as an ambassador for Wash and Go? Do you know what they said? They said, because you embody everything our brand's about. And I thought, you're with it. You know what you're on about it. You're a brand about the town. Because when I think about Wash and Go, I think 2 in 1. And when I think about myself, which isn't very often, but when I do think about it, I think, yes, 2 in 1. Presenter, international sex symbol. I also find that Wash and Go is extremely fast and efficient as a brand to use. And, well, that's me as well. Just ask Mrs. Goldbridge. You know, there's nothing I can't do too quickly. And on top of that, when I think about Twitter, I think, well, effectively, in a very watered-down version, most people are replying to me saying WashAndGoBridge. So when I think about it, it really is a no-brainer. Mark Goldbridge, Wash and Go. A match like no other. Enjoy the clip. The most underrated player at each of the traditional top 6 clubs. And once we've done that, if we've got time, we will do a few other clubs as well. So let's start off with the champions then, Manchester City. Who would you say is the most underrated player at Manchester City? I think the chat's going to be full of Ferran Torres, who I honestly do not necessarily think is massively underrated. But a lot of people seem to always talk about Ferran Torres being underrated. I don't think Foden's underrated. I think everybody likes Foden. So I don't think he's underrated. We're only 70 subscribers away from 555,000, by the way, so please subscribe, bottom right hand corner. Mahrez is a good shout from the Gunner guy. Jesus I don't rate anyway, Elliot, so it wouldn't be him for him. A few people saying Rodri as well. I think Fernandinho was always underrated, so I would agree with you on Rodri. Cancelo is another one as well. Underrated. Somebody just said Mendy. He's incarcerated. He's not underrated. And Rodrigo, Zinchenko. I actually would say Gundogan. I think Gundogan would have been good at one point, but I think Gundogan is actually very much rated now. So I would say, for me, it's Mahrez. Mahrez is the underrated one for me. I know a lot of people say Ferran Torres, but I just think Mahrez is, again, there's something weird in the world where if you don't play for Portugal or France or Spain or Brazil or even England to a certain point, I just think if Mahrez was Portuguese or French, he'd be far more rated. I mean, Mo Salah has this problem. You know, he's one of the world's best players, but he doesn't get the I don't think Salah gets the appreciation he would get if he was Brazilian. And I think that's just to do with football traditions, isn't it? It's nothing to do with like anything more sinister than that. I just think that if you've got football tradition and then you're a good player from that club, you do get it. And look, Portugal had Eusebio, so don't talk to me about Portugal haven't got great footballing traditions. They do. Eusebio is one of the best players that played the game, and he played in the 60s. So I just think that for me it's Mahrez who's underrated. Let's do Chelsea second then. So underrated, most underrated player. I've said Mahrez for Man City. Obviously there is no right answer with this. It's just a discussion, which I enjoy. So thanks everyone who's watching. Make sure you smash a like. It's half time at the moment. It's 1-1. Chelsea underrated. I do think Mason Mount's underrated, by the way, and I think it's a very different thing for Mason Mount because. Look at those Hungarian fans there. They've even got a fighting with the police. And look at that. Just watching this here. They're getting really pushed back by the Hungarians. Look at them throwing the punches. Bloody hell. I'll tell you what I'd do. The police have been pushed back by the Hungarian fans there. Get some more bloody police in. We're not having that in our own bloody country. You can't have the police
getting kicked shitless by Hungarians, you know, or French. Not saying the French are there. I'm not blaming the French. What I'm saying is, this is the English National Stadium. You can't be being knocked back into the bloody, you know the bit you walk out into the stadium where you come up the steps. The Hungarians have forced the police back. Bloody joke. Get some more police. Get them sorted. I'm not having any of that. They're there with bloody banners being racist and the police are getting kicked out of their own bloody ground. Come on, sort yourselves out. Anyway, Kovacic is a player at Chelsea I've always really liked, and I think he's a bit underrated. Rudiger is another good shout. Mason Mount's a good shout as well. I'm open to suggestions on this. Reece James I think is underrated as well. I think he's a very good player. But I think if I had to narrow it down to two, if you'd have asked me a year ago, I would have said Kovacic. But I think in the year since, for me, it would probably be Rudiger. I think he's massively underrated. I think he's getting the sort of credit he deserves now. Aspilicueta's a good one. Christensen's a good one. But I think Rudiger, for me, is one of the best centre-backs in the world at the moment. So is he not criminally underrated? Probably a little bit. But Lukaku is as useful as a bag of rocks, says Billy Shaw. Okay. I don't think Lukaku's underrated. I think Lukaku gets the credit he deserves as one of the world's better strikers, definitely. Some people say Mount's overrated. So I would say Rudiger for me. Let's do Liverpool. Most underrated player at Liverpool. Well, look, I'd like to say Salah, but I don't think Salah's underrated. I think everyone knows Salah's world class. I just don't think Salah gets mentioned in the... You know where I think Salah's underrated? I think everyone knows Salah's a world class player, but Salah doesn't get mentioned in the same conversations as Mbappe and Neymar and Messi and Ronaldo as much as I think he should do. That's my issue with Salah. I don't think he's underrated by any means, but how often do you hear Salah mentioned in the same sentence as Neymar or an Mbappe? And you don't. So for me, I think he doesn't get the credit he deserves. He's not underrated. In a Liverpool team, who do I think's underrated? I think Fabinho is definitely playing in a position that doesn't get the hype that it deserves. But I think a lot of people are quite right saying Matip. Matip's getting a lot of the votes. And I think Matip really was as big a loss as Van Dijk last season. Not because he's better than a good centre-back. And no, they've bought Konate, and I think Konate will be one for the future. But it doesn't surprise me that Konate can't get a game. And obviously they've got Joe Gomez as well. In some ways, they've got two very good young centre-backs in Gomez and Konate, but Matip keeps them out. So I think Matip is probably a good shout there as well. Manchester United, well, this is my club, so I'll have to go to the chats. Have you watched the Wayne Rooney documentary on Amazon? It's not out yet, Akash. It's only the trailer that's out at the moment. It's not out till early next year. Manchester United's most underrated player. I think Luke Shaw's become quite rated now, to be fair. In fact, he's probably jumped the shark of being rated to being underrated again, actually. I think Luke Shaw's a very important player for Man United. He's not had a great start to the season, but he is a very good player. It's hard with United because United tend to have players that are overrated because we spend a lot of money on them and then don't get the best out of them. Like, you know, technically people could say Sancho's overrated, Pogba's overrated, Ronaldo's overrated. Not because they're not bad players, but because we're not getting the best out of them. Some in the short term, some in the longer term. It's hard to be an underrated player at Manchester United because I don't think we're getting the best out of what we've got. I therefore think that... I mean, De Gea's probably become underrated. I think he wasn't rated unfairly, and I think this season he's shown how good he is. But has he already jumped to being a good player again? Matic is... I think Wan-Bissaka for me. I think Wan-Bissaka is underrated. There is this... Even in the United fan base, there is this perception that he's not very good. Actually, I think he's a brilliant defensive right-back. He does need to improve on going forward, but he's a brilliant, brilliant defensive right-back. So I'd be happy to give it to Wan-Bissaka, yeah. I don't think Greenwood's underrated. I think everyone knows we've got one of the best young players in the world there. yeah, I'd go Wan-Bissaka. So that's that. So let's do Arsenal next. Yeah, let's have a laugh. Who's the most underrated player at Arsenal? I'm trying to think who I underrate at Arsenal. Silence. It's such a hard conversation, isn't it? The thing with Arsenal is they haven't got many good players, and the players that are good I do rate. So Saka's a good player. Smith Rowe's a good player. I think Odegaard's a good player as well. Obviously, Aubameyang, if he's played through the middle, I think he's still a very good striker. I mean, Ramsdale's barely played. I find it hard to give you an underrated player at Arsenal, because Partey's a good player. Like, I don't think he's underrated. Ramsdale's only just gone there. I find it hard to do one for Arsenal, not because I'm taking the piss. There are players at Arsenal that I actually do rate, but I don't know whether there's any players I underrate at Arsenal. Kieran Tierney's overrated in my opinion. I think he's a good left back, but I don't think he's as good as Arsenal fans make out. And then the lad they've got at right back looks good. Their keeper looks good, Ramsdale. Ben White could be a really good player for them, but they've not really been there long enough. I tell you who I'm going to go with. I think Gabriel, the centre-back, because whilst he's not set the world on fire, I think they're a better team with him in it. And I think he's had to put up with quite a lot. You know, crap partners, crap performances. He's done a lot of defending in his first year at Arsenal. And I think this season, with Ben White and some stability in the goalkeeping and the back four, he could become a really good centre-back at Arsenal. I don't think he's been a flop. So I think I'm going to make a prediction there that he might not be a bad player, so he's a bit underrated. Spurs then. Underrated at Spurs. I'll tell you what, there's one name that comes out to me straight away. Lucas Moura. I think he's been an unlucky player at Spurs, because I've seen Lucas Moura play and be the best player on the pitch. And he spends a lot of time on the bench, and he spent a lot of the time on the bench under Mourinho. And I don't know whether that's just because they don't want to play Kane, Moura and Son because it's too attacking. So you're always going to pick Kane and Son. But I actually think Lucas Moura is a really good player. I don't think Son's underrated. A lot of people are saying Son. I do not think Son is underrated. I think people in the know, probably most of you lot, and certainly myself, I don't underrate Son. I think Son's one of Spurs' best two players. Do I think Son's on the same level as a Salah or a Mane or a Foden or a De Bruyne or a Bruno? No, he's not consistent enough. But would I like to see Son playing for Liverpool? I think he'd be perfect. I think Son for Liverpool, you'd really find out how good he is. I think he's got another gear to go up, which he can't go up at Spurs. But I think Lucas Moura for me, for Spurs. We're not quite